Every week, college football games hinge on a single word.
Touchdown. Touchdown, Texas. Touchdown, Oklahoma. Touchdown. Touchdown. Touchdown, Wisconsin. Touchdown. 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 Touchdown, Stanford. Touchdown. Touchdown, Alabama. Touchdown, Notre Dame. Touchdown. Wow.
This is Touchdown Radio. Here's Gino Torretta and Taylor Zarzour.
Good to be with you for week 3 of the college football season. And Gino, first and foremost, we certainly will never lose sight of what this day is and what happened on it 24 years ago. And I think that the best thing about our country is that all of us can connect to each other through great sources of entertainment, and one of those is college football. So we won't lose sight of that, but we won't lose sight of what day it is either.
Yeah, there's no question. And then, it brings you back and what that day was, what that, next few months was like, where we didn't know, a lot of things going on. And I think, the bringing back college football and professional football, I think was kind of the first steps back to normalcy, back after 9/11.
I know you're doing an Arkansas Ole Miss game this weekend. I went to an Alabama-Arkansas game right after that, and it was a very powerful experience, that's for sure. And hopefully everybody bonds together with football over the next few days. Okay, tell me what you thought of Iowa State. It was a great weekend for rivalries last week. I mean, we had some highly contested ones. We had Missouri and Kansas playing for the first time in over a decade. You had South Florida beating Florida last weekend in the Swamp. And, of course, you went to Iowa State. There were a bunch more, but what did you think?
Well, I think as we talked about going into last week's game, wasn't, the marquee matchups, the top-ranked teams against each other like we had in week 1, but college football delivers. It doesn't matter if it's 2 top 10 teams, 2 top 20 teams, whatever. It delivers, and it gives us great moments in every game. You mentioned obviously USF was the big upset, or quote unquote upset, but I think in the first 3 games, are there really upsets, or is it just an exposure of, I think, a lot of the voting and or where the rankings are? People are just kind of guessing going into the season. And it's even worse now that we have the transfer portal and things like that, where you're trying to figure out. I mean, as I do research on Arkansas, Ole Miss, Arkansas lost their top 8 pass catchers. Okay, do they have good receivers this year? Well, we got to look at game film from a bunch of other different schools, but that seems to be college football and the norm. But I would just say it delivers. Iowa State was just a gorgeous environment. I mean, Ames, Iowa was a great environment, and props to the Marriott in West Des Moines, Taylor. I will say it's one of the best that I've been to. Had the nice M Club, and I was nice. Greatly shocked with the suites there. So
that's awesome. And now everyone knows what we really care about when we travel to and from these games. But it was highly contested. It's the only difference we had last week. You took Iowa State, I took Iowa. So we're tied on the season. We're both 16-4 making picks. So we've gotten off to good starts, but you went 9-1 this past week. Your only loss was the Arizona State-Mississippi State game. How about Jeff Lebby and Mississippi State, beating Arizona State?
I mean, unbelievable. It just goes to show you, just the end of games like that one, obviously with the big play, but Arizona State, their secondary was pretty porous, giving up some major plays in man coverage. I think one of the other things that I've noticed, I saw it firsthand, Notre Dame against Miami. The young quarterbacks and or new quarterbacks. And I would say the end of the Iowa State game, Gronowski started 50-some games at the FCS level. He missed spring with a shoulder injury. You get to the end of the game, and you need to run a 2-minute drill. 2-minute drills are only practiced probably once a week once you get in the season, and they don't have that, compounded knowledge of the plays, of the calls, of getting plays off, and they don't get plays off. and they take sacks. They don't read the play fast enough. I think Carr had the same situation in Notre Dame against Miami. And you can see where I would say the transfer portal and playing some of these young quarterbacks hurts early in the year, especially when you get in a crunch situation where they have to essentially be the play caller on the field, and they can't do it.
We're going to talk more about the transfer portal in the next segment of the show and talk about some news with only one transfer portal window moving forward and what needs to be done to hopefully fix our game. I really believe it's broken. I don't believe it's had any impact on the audience whatsoever, but it needs some significant changes, and we'll get into that. And you just addressed one of them, and it is so noticeable at the beginning of the season. And you certainly nailed some of the issues that these teams are dealing with early in the year. You had, speaking of the transfer portal and how much money each program is making, I'm a big fan of Dan Lanning, and I love these speeches he's giving to his team before big games. And, I mean, they went out and absolutely destroyed Oklahoma State, who has the most transfers of any team in the country. I guess I'm sure we'll get some pushback on this because I don't know if you've done this, Gino, looking in these game notes. Each school says they have a different amount of players that have moved on from different rosters, so it's hard to figure. But Oklahoma State, if they're not number one, is very close in terms of how they only have a few returning players on the team, and they lost 69-3 to Oregon last weekend.
Well, it was just, you're talking about Oregon, one of the best teams in the country. I think Dan Lanning is one of the best coaches, in the country. He's done great. And Gundy to kind of stoke the fire about the transfer portal and, Oregon's got too much money. Listen, the system is the system. And no matter what the coaches say, you can't win that argument, and you can't go into a game crying spilled milk before you're actually going to go take a trip there. But it's funny as we prepare every week for games. I'm like, okay, wait a sec. I remember seeing this kid. Well, that was 2 schools ago, and it was only 2 years ago. It's interesting. I think, this whole transfer portal thing with the one, window, maybe that settles it down some. I don't agree with where the window is. I thought it should have been after the full year, and then make the college schedule like an NFL OTA schedule after spring ball, and at least that each student can actually get 2 semesters at a school, have a certain amount of credits, and then decide to move on. But they didn't decide that was the best for the programs.
And here you go, going into my next segment of the show already. We will get into that in greater detail in a moment, and then I want to get your thoughts on Clemson and Georgia Tech. Alabama's got Wisconsin this weekend. Georgia at Tennessee, a huge game on Rocky Top with the Dogs and the Vols. USC is at Purdue. I mean, come on, folks. Big Ten rivalry game between USC and Purdue on CBS. Welcome to 2025. Wow, that's hard to get adjusted to. Miami and South Florida in a top 20 matchup in Miami. You thought the Notre Dame game was tough. Wait till the Bulls come into town on Saturday on the CW, by the way.
Well, and really down here, like everybody was talking about, okay, if we get through, Miami gets through Notre Dame, then it's Florida.
Yeah.
And then Florida gets upset, obviously, by USF. I don't know if that's an upset or, you know what, USF's a pretty good football team. They played great on the road and won the game. I would say probably the bad thing for USF is now Miami knows, there's not, hey, we can't not play our best game and go out there and beat this team. The funny thing is our friends up in Jacksonville at 1010XL and Frangie and those guys, I saw a clip and it was on one of the other shows up there. And I can't take credit for it. They're calling them the Bad News Billies at Florida. And I just started laughing. I just because Florida's ready to, or the fans seem to be ready to move on from coaches. And I mean, we're talking, I think we have to talk hot seat, and we're only in week 3 of a season.
And this guy has already been on it and off of it and back on it. And it's, he's gone from scorching hot seat to, oh, this guy, look at him turn the program around, and Florida's going to have a chance to go to the playoffs this year, to, oh, he's back on the hot seat, he's done, who's our next coach going to be? Welcome to college football. It's crazy. LSU, by the way, is hosting the Gators this Saturday night. Notre Dame plays Texas A&M in South Bend. I just saw the Aggies, so we'll get into that. South Carolina has Vandy, 2 undefeated teams. Vanderbilt just whipped the Virginia Tech Hokies. South Carolina also beat Virginia Tech, so both of those teams have had the same opponent so far in the season. So those are some games that we'll concentrate on as the show continues. And West Virginia plays Pitt this week. Of course, West Virginia is coming off the loss to Ohio last week. So we'll get to all those matchups coming up, but more on the transfer portal. Ryan Day does not like the proposed changes, the Ohio State coach. Brian Kelly had some response to Ryan Day that we'll get into as Touchdown Radio Tailgate continues. It is Touchdown Radio Tailgate, and we're glad to be with you. He's Gino. I'm Taylor. If I'm going to read straight from Max Olson at ESPN.com, who earlier this week said the NCAA announced last week that the FBS Oversight Committee voted to move the winter transfer portal window from December to January, shifting to a 10-day period that would start on January 2nd, 2026. The committee also supported eliminating the spring transfer window in April, meaning FBS players would have 10 days in January to enter their name in the NCAA transfer portal if they wish to transfer to another school for the 2026 season. Now, we'll get to the comments of some of the coaches on this in just a minute, but first I need the comments from Gino Torretta. Just one transfer window, Gino, instead of 2. What do you think?
Well, I like that there will be one transfer window. We'll see if it holds up in court, because it seems like whenever a decision is made in college football, somebody takes it to court, and college football loses, or the NCAA loses. I agree with the one window. I don't agree with where it is. And, to make it January 2nd, which is right after the quarterfinals. So you're going to have 4 teams that are still playing and actively trying to win 2 more games to win a national championship. There is no question there will be players on that team, probably backups, highly rated backups, that are looking to move somewhere to start right away, that they're going to lose for the last 2 weeks of the season. We've seen it last year where Penn State lost their backup quarterback. It didn't end up affecting them, but the backup quarterback played significant snaps during the season, but he transferred, during that run in their playoff run. To me, I really don't, these coaches and their comments about, well, we got to get our roster set. I don't understand, why can't you just move it to April or May after the second semester?
Right.
Get your roster set then. That's 4 months to get ready. These kids do not go home in the summer anymore. There is no more summer. They're taking summer classes. They're working out in the summer. Have some organized practices in the summer, whether it's padded or unpadded, whatever you need to do. I'm fairly certain you can figure out your roster in April and not affect the last 4 teams in the playoff.
Yeah, I would love to see that happen too. I'm sure the pushback from the coaches is building their roster and how many recruits they have coming in, and then it's so late in the process to get your team ready for the next year, and it would just be chaos over the summer. But I'm sure that's their pushback to that, but I would prefer that over it impacting the college football playoffs. Now, I will say what I do like, there's a couple things I do like about this. Number one, I really like one transfer window instead of 2. I think 2 is outrageous, and I think it's ridiculous. I think it's really hurting college football to have 2 transfer windows, and these coaches constantly have to think about what their roster is going to look like at multiple times of the year. There was a guy that plays for Kentucky now, a receiver for Kentucky, that transferred to Nebraska this past spring semester and then came back to Kentucky this fall semester. And he's playing for Kentucky. And he was just at Nebraska for the spring. And that's it. That's crazy. I mean, look, I'm not blaming the kid. I'm blaming the system that allows the kid to be able to do something like that. That's got to stop. So that's the one thing. I really am a fan of one of these. The other thing I do like about where this date is as somebody that's called a lot of wonderful college football bowl games the last 10 years, it's had a huge impact on these bowl games. And I know that people say, oh, who cares about the bowl games? Well, I mean, the ratings are incredible for those that time of year, and it's had a big impact on the level of play. If you move the transfer window, Gino, to January the 2nd, you would think a lot of those players are still going to play in the bowl games now before they opt out and then go play for another team.
Yeah, I mean, what was it, Marshall last year? They make a bowl game and they had such a mass exodus of players, they didn't even have enough of a roster to go to the bowl game. I mean, bowls were supposed to be bowl games. We're supposed to be here. This is a crowning achievement for your season. We go make a nice trip. We get nice bowl gifts and all those sorts of things. And you're exactly right. It has taken, the I guess lesser bowl games or before the playoff games, which are, listen, college football is great entertainment. And like we just talked about, whether it's last week where we didn't have a ton of matchups against ranked opponents, they're fun to watch. Everybody watches the bowl games. Players like taking the trips, but when you add that transfer window, and these guys just ended up leaving schools and changing schools, so that will just affect these last four teams. Now, if this is set, I'm like, I still don't understand. These SEC coaches seem like they're set that this is how they want it. The Big Ten coaches are, this is ridiculous. Why don't we move it, to the spring or some other time? I don't understand why the SEC is so set. Maybe they could do this if they moved it to the spring, and they're saying, well, we need our roster set, and they have a focus on high school recruiting like it used to be. That was your only way to acquire players. You have still the January or February signing date, whatever that is, for the high school players. There's some kind of flexibility if you have an April transfer window, meaning, you know what? Hey, if I can only have 100 guys on scholarship, well, you know what? There's more transfers want to come here than I thought. Is there some kind of leeway there with one or two players that the NC2A could give the schools to where, hey, you're not a hard, fast rule? That's where I would think that they would want to move it.
Right.
But these SEC coaches are set that they want it. They want it in January and they want to set. I would think focus on high school recruiting. Get that set. How about take some time off, guys? Like, you know what? Okay, here, you have a transfer portal window in the spring. Take some time off after the signing date for high school players, and then you got to ramp it up. All you're doing is changing their schedule, but they seem stubborn and want to have it in the winter.
Yeah, and again, just to your point, Ryan Day doesn't think it's a good idea at all. And the conversations we had with the Big Ten coaches, I think the majority of them agree. I just don't quite understand how teams that are playing in the playoffs are expected to make the decisions and sign their upcoming players while they're still getting ready to play in the games. It doesn't make any sense to me. Well, that I can understand him saying that because, as you said, they've been playing for national championships, and we'll see where this leads, but I would think that one transfer window would be progress over two. Okay, enough of that. Let's get to the games of Week 3 and talk about them coming up next on Touchdown Radio Tailgate. Okay, Gino, here we go. Let's talk about the games of Week 3 of the college football season. We'll make some picks on them coming up in the next segment, but first, you've got a good one. You've got Ole Miss and Arkansas this weekend at Vaught Hemingway Stadium in Oxford, Mississippi. 17th ranked Rebels against the undefeated Razorbacks of Arkansas. As you have already said, Arkansas is a bunch of fresh faces on their team, but they are 2-0, and this has been a very competitive game in the last few years.
Well, it has been, except for last year when Ole Miss hung 63 and set a record in the series, and I think this is one of those. The Arkansas has taken I would say the old school SEC route where we used to have kind of 3 preseason games and games against maybe the directional schools, and they have two big wins already. What does that mean? That's what I'm curious is now all of a sudden the competition is going to be completely ramped up. You're
Right.
playing a top-notch SEC opponent, albeit with a younger quarterback, a less experienced quarterback. And are we to believe that these scores that Arkansas put up in the first 2 weeks are going to hold? I will say this: I think the quarterback has continues to get better. Taylor Green, Bobby Petrino has shown in his second year at places that the offense tends to get the improvement and the big jumps, and probably goes to my point in the first segment on, with experienced quarterback, you can run a 2-minute drill. With an experienced quarterback in tight situations, you feel pretty comfortable, and Arkansas has that. And I think, Ole Miss, they're running a ton of plays, fast-paced offense. Not a lot of time for the analyst and the radio broadcast to get a word in edgewise, but it should be a great environment. Looking forward to being in Oxford.
Come on, Lane. Let the play-by-play guy take a breath, man. Come on. That'll be fun. Of course, a couple years ago, they had that wacky game and went down to a 2-point conversion, and there have been some competitive ones in the series, but like you said, that was not the case the last time the two teams met. We're not picking that game. We're also not picking number 4 Oregon at Northwestern. That's a noon Eastern time kick on Fox, and you were talking about how the Ducks are for real. I would think they wouldn't have a problem in a sleepy start at Northwestern at 11 a.m. local time there, but that's 9 a.m. body time for the Ducks. Those are always tricky.
Yeah, you figure their wake up is 5 a.m. body clock time, 6 a.m. They're having a pregame meal, 3 hours before kick, and so we've kind of seen where these new, as I was doing research on this week, I was looking for a UCLA score, and I go to Pac-12, and I'm like, wait a sec. Oh, I forgot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's just it has gotten to the point to me where it's just like, you know what? Can we just go to kind of
just
regional
2 conferences, AFC and NFC, Big Ten and SEC? Yeah, it would make more sense. It would be easier for us to follow if that were the case.
Yeah, you're making these West Coast schools and in the Oregon, Washington, SC and UCLA.
Yeah,
I personally, I don't think you should be playing a game at your 9 a.m. body clock. That would be ridiculous. That would be like us going to broadcast game. Although we would make sure we would get home on Saturday night if we started at 9
yeah. There you go. See?
On the West Coast.
See, you're talking yourself into this now. Number 13, Oklahoma is at Temple. That's also a noon kick. The Oregon game's on Fox. That game, the Oklahoma game's on ESPN2. Oklahoma, of course, just beat Michigan, and now they go play in Philly at Temple. It's interesting, scheduled by our the former AD, Joe Castiglione there going to Temple. I've got number 24 Auburn versus South Alabama. That's a 12:45 start on SEC Network. And Gino, I don't think a lot of people expect the game to be highly competitive. It wouldn't shock me if South Alabama gave Auburn a game. They almost beat Tennessee a few years ago. They beat Mississippi State years ago. They have fought hard with LSU, but this is a significant game where I come from. These two teams have never played. Alabama has never played South Alabama or UAB. Auburn's played UAB one time 29 years ago, and they've never played South Alabama. So the other FBS teams in the state of Alabama getting a chance against a big boy, and that'll be a big deal in my home state. I grew up 1 mile from South Alabama's campus, so it'd be pretty cool to get to be on the call for that as they play the Auburn Tigers.
Well, you're going to get to see one of the players who I thought was the coveted quarterback transfer portal guy in Jackson Arnold. I thought he was real talented last year at Oklahoma, and Oklahoma just decided to go in a different direction. And I think Auburn and Hugh Freeze have kind of hit the jackpot there so far in the game. So curious to hear your thoughts after the game. But he's very talented, great athlete, great arm. And should be good, but yeah, this is more of a tune-up to for the Auburn Tigers.
We got some big games coming up, Gino.
Exactly
in the weeks to come against Oklahoma. He makes a return trip there. They also have Texas A&M and Georgia on the schedule. And Auburn, this is crazy. Auburn's ranked for the first time in 4 years, if you can believe that. That's just nuts. Number 21, Texas Tech is hosting Oregon State. Texas Tech is undefeated so far in the season. Iowa State is at Arkansas State. Iowa State could be a college football playoff contender in the Big 12 this season. Utah's another one to watch in the Big 12. They're at Wyoming on Saturday night. So those are some other top 25 games that we will not be picking, but there are a bunch that we will be picking that we'll get to here coming up. As we look outside the top 25, how about UCLA, Gino? 0-2 in the Nico Iamaleava era. They play Friday night against New Mexico.
Well, it's terrible start for UCLA, and I can just say this: in the spring, I went out and watched USC and watched UCLA, and an entirely different body type, I would say, on the field at UCLA versus USC, and I was concerned then. And there was, I believe, 6 quarterbacks on the roster through spring, and then Nico came in. I'm not sure how many are still there, but I'm fairly certain most of the 6 hit the road after that transfer. But one quarterback does not make a team, and I think there was a lot of other missing parts with UCLA, but they have to right the ship at some point in time, else the season, else it's going to be, Penn State comes to town later in the year. They got to go on the road to Ohio State. I mean, it doesn't get any easier for UCLA. So I'm not sure what they can do, but they got to figure out a way to win a couple games.
Okay, and one more that we're not going to pick. ACC game, Gino. 10:30 Saturday night on ACC Network. 1-1 Boston College at 0-2 Stanford. ACC matchup between a team that is in Massachusetts and one that's in Northern California. How about that?
That is great. I think it's kind of like when we travel and I see Stanford tennis team in the Miami airport, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. I grew up near Stanford. What are they doing here? But I would say this: Boston College had a great game. They had a disappointing loss last week. Their quarterback's playing well. I think they're a lot tougher out as this season progresses for BC, and Stanford has obviously got off to an awful start, being 0-2, and kind of that, I would say, kind of in the same situation as UCLA. I mean, it's not going to get any easier for either school, and at some point in time, you got to pick up a win or get lucky in a game, create some turnovers to win a game. I think there's that, and we haven't even talked about, I mean, kind of briefly, the coaches on the hot seat of this season. I mean, one of the bigger games, I would say, Wisconsin at Alabama. I mean, their Wisconsin season doesn't get any easier as they get on, and they've already lost a starting quarterback again, and if they get pounded by Alabama, does that mean Wisconsin is maybe looking for a new coach?
Save yourself for that, because we're going to get to that one in the next segment. But I would go the other way. I don't disagree with you. But what if they win? I mean, if you think it's loud in Tuscaloosa now, wait till they lose at home to the Badgers at high noon or 11 a.m. I guess local time there in Tuscaloosa. So save yourself. Let's get to that coming up next. We'll also talk about Clemson, Georgia Tech. We'll get into Georgia and Tennessee, USC's at Purdue, Miami at South Florida, Notre Dame has Texas A&M, LSU plays Florida, South Carolina plays Vandy. We'll get to all of that coming up next on Touchdown Radio Tailgate. It's time to make some picks on the Week 3 matchups, and Torretta and I are tied. It's 16-4. How about that start, man? Picking winners the first 2 weeks of the season.
I feel pretty good. You usually start off hot, and I'm terrible. So I feel pretty good about my choices so far. This even though I thought I was undefeated.
Yeah, well, Mississippi State with that last second win prevented that for you. All right, you already mentioned Alabama and Wisconsin. Let's start there. That's a noon kick on ABC. That's 11 a.m. Central Time for Bama and Aria Torretta's Wisconsin Badgers. Bama's a big favorite in the game. They look, I mean, just hung 70 on Louisiana Monroe last week, but obviously a lot of people still thinking about that Florida State game. And Luke Fickell still trying to get Wisconsin back to where they're competing, at least to get to the Big Ten championship game. What do you think of this matchup?
Well, I think that, Wisconsin's already lost their starting quarterback. This is, year two. Tyler Van Dyke started last year, got hurt against Alabama. Wisconsin loses their starter in week one. So they are 2-0, but they really haven't played anybody. And I think, everybody is talking, well, Alabama and obviously Kalen DeBoer and kind of struggles against Florida State. I think when this season plays out, Florida State's a lot better than people will give them credit for. Probably more like the team that missed out on the playoffs than the 2-win team from a season ago. So I think Alabama rolls in this, and I do think at that point in time, Wisconsin is maybe starts the thought of, is Fickell the right fit here in Madison?
Gino, had a chance to broadcast a Clemson game and a Georgia Tech game last year, and big fan of Klubnik. I think that the Clemson quarterback will be a really good pro one day, but I don't know that I like this Clemson team that much in terms of a legitimate top of college football contender, at least through what I've seen the first 2 weeks of the season. They had a 60-minute fight with Troy, losing most of the game, and ended up coming back and winning, and obviously lost to LSU. And I got to tell you, last year SMU was the team that shocked everybody and got to the college football playoff. I'm not ready to say it's going to happen, but if I were to pick a surprise team, the Ramblin' Wreck of Georgia Tech could be that pick. I'm taking, by the way, we're both picking Alabama to beat Wisconsin. I'm also picking Georgia Tech to beat Clemson in an early kick in Atlanta on Saturday.
I am 100% with you. I think Clemson, and for all of the potential we still see on Clemson's offense and the talent, we have not seen consistency. And whatever that is, whether it's the OC and Riley and Klubnik not kind of being on the same page, whatever the reasons are, Clemson has not lived up to the hype and the billing. Now they righted the ship last year and made it to the playoffs through the ACC, and Georgia Tech is tough, hard nosed. I thought I was going to be different with you here because you were on Clemson on week one against LSU, but I would agree. I'm thinking Georgia Tech is and Haynes King finds some way to win a lot of ball games this year, and they're going to win this one as well.
For whatever it's worth, we both picked LSU against Clemson. I love your memory, and you thought I picked Clemson, but I did pick LSU. I've not picked Clemson yet this year. I'm not picking them here. Okay.
CTE.
Yeah, that game's on ESPN, by the way, and Clemson's a slight favorite in the game. Memphis is a slight favorite at Troy. Going a little off the grid on you here because we're trying to still see, identify who is the best team in the group of five. I think South Florida is sort of perceived to be that team. They're the only ranked team in the group of five right now, but I'm big on Memphis this year. I think they have a chance to make some noise at the end of the season. I'll take them to beat Troy, who's also a good team, obviously almost beat Clemson last week.
I'm with you on Memphis. I think that obviously the head coach is going to be one of those hot names for hot seats that burn up and are looking for an opening. I would say this: Troy seems to always play everybody. It doesn't matter what level defensively they get up for games, but I like Memphis as well.
Okay, no disagreements for us yet. Next, number 6 Georgia is at number 15 Tennessee. 3:30 kick on ABC. College Game Day is there this weekend on Rocky Top. Really good start for Aguilar, the new quarterback for Tennessee. Basically a trade for Iamaliava and Aguilar going to opposite programs. Georgia, maybe the weather had something to do with their poor performance, although Austin Peay looks really good through the first 2 weeks of the season. But the Dog fans are nervous about this one, Gino. Should they be?
They should be. I mean, it's obviously one of the toughest places, one of the loudest environments in the Southeastern Conference. And obviously the offense creates problems with your defense with the wide splits and things like that on the wide receiver. But I think Georgia goes on the road and pulls this one out.
Yeah, and I agree. I need to see it to believe it. I know Tennessee beat Syracuse, and they've looked good the first 2 weeks, but I think this is a completely different ball game. And just given the experience that Georgia has playing in these environments and how successful they have been as a road team. I know the Ole Miss game was one to forget last year, but other than that, Kirby Smart has just been so good on the road. I need to see it to believe it with Tennessee, so I'll take the dogs to be on top as well. Okay, we might get a difference here on this next one. The USC Trojans are playing at the Purdue Boilermakers in a Big Ten battle, if you can believe that. USC 3:30 on CBS is a 20.5 point favorite in the game. Any chance I can get you to take Purdue as an upset here?
Not a chance. Saw
Okay.
saw USC firsthand in the spring, and they have their roster is upgraded with size up front, both offensively and defensively. Their QB Maiyava is more experienced. They have some weapons on the outside. Jacoby is an absolute stud on the at wide receiver. No, SC I think is going to roll through, and I think shock. I picked them. I think they're going to win the Big Ten.
All right. We both take the Trojans there. How about the CW at 4:30 on Saturday gets Miami and South Florida? Miami's a 17.5 point favorite in the game, and I'm just going to go ahead and tell you now, they roll
Take the
against South.
points.
They roll against South Florida on Saturday. I'm a really big fan of what South Florida's program is doing right now, but that Florida performance last weekend was pitiful. I didn't think South Florida looked like a world beater by any means. I just thought Florida really looked poor in the game. Miami has looked good the first 2 weeks, and I thought really looked good in that game against Notre Dame. I think South Florida will have the Canes' attention. I take the U big here.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you. I'm taking Miami, but I'm disagreeing with you. I would take the points. There's no way 17.5 because we all know how Miami, once they get up by a touchdown or two, plays conservative football, and I don't see that changing at all. Playing against South Florida, I think they'll win the game, but I think they're going to get too conservative as they've shown in the past, and keep it close. Unfortunately.
I like Coach Golish a lot. I'm a big fan of his, and I've enjoyed being around him when he was the offensive coordinator at Tennessee, and like the program he's building. But I think this is a tough one for him on Saturday. Next, LSU and Florida. So the Gators are coming off that loss, and now they have to go to Tiger Stadium on Saturday night. 7:30 kick on ABC. LSU is a 7.5 point favorite in the game. Man, I want to take the Gators. I just can't do it though. I'll take LSU at home.
Well, you can't. They did shock everybody last year. And I still can remember Florida playing Texas. So I broadcasted that game, and I was like, "Wow, this is the worst SEC roster I've ever seen." And somehow, some way, the next week they go and they beat LSU at home, but they're not doing it this year. I don't think that they've shown much improvement. We obviously, saw the poor performance against South Florida at home. Now they got to go on the road in one of the toughest environments in college football against LSU. So I'm taking the home team Tigers as well.
All right, you get to go first on this one. Number 16 Texas A&M at number 8 Notre Dame. 7:30 kick on NBC. Irish favored by 6.5.
Well, I really like Carr, the quarterback at Notre Dame, but I can't pick Notre Dame as a Miami guy, so I'm
Oh
taking
no!
Texas A&M on the road.
Oh man! I mean, we're not going to have any differences at all here. I'm taking the Aggies. I just saw them, and I know that Notre Dame's had an extra week to prepare, but I really like Marcel Reed. I love these Texas A&M wide receivers that they've got. Casey Concepcion comes over from NC State. Mario Craver over from Mississippi State. Those guys can fly. Just get them the ball in space. Obviously, the Aggies have a really strong running game and are good up front. I think defensive line is where we need to see A&M improve a little bit, but I think this is Mike Elko's big win. The former defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, as the head coach of the Aggies, goes in there and upsets Notre Dame and South Bend. Gosh, I thought that was going to be my chance to pick up a game on you.
Come on, I can't pick Notre Dame.
Number 11 South Carolina against Vanderbilt at 7:45 on SEC Network. The Commodores are 2-0, just beat Virginia Tech. South Carolina did not look great last week against South Carolina State, but they did beat Virginia Tech just like Vandy did 2 weeks ago. South Carolina is only a 4.5-point favorite in the game, Gino. Who do you like?
I'm taking Vandy. I believe them. They had a dominant performance
Wow.
last week, like you said, against Tech. I'm taking Vandy. I'm a believer.
I'm taking the Gamecocks at home. Lenora Sellers in South Carolina, but I do think it'll be close, like field goal game, go down to the wire. But I'll say the home field advantage is the difference in the game, and South Carolina will win it, eking it out over the Commodores. But wow, what a good start for both of these teams, but especially for Clark Lee and Vanderbilt. Finally, extra game. Well, this is the 10th pick, but it's outside the top 25. Big rivalry in college football. West Virginia hosting Pitt at 3:30 on Saturday. West Virginia lost last week to Ohio. Pitt is 2-0. It's in Morgantown. Give me West Virginia.
You're taking West Virginia at home. Wow, come on, backyard brawl me. I'm taking Pitt. Pitt goes on the road, and it's only right down the street. They might stay in their home hotel when they play West Virginia. You and I have made a trip down there with a stop at Panera on the way for a little sandwich. But so I think Pitt does it and takes care of business. But again, great environment there in West Virginia.
Yes, we like to stay at the Airport Hotel in Pittsburgh as we drive to to and from Morgantown, and I'm sure you will be doing that again soon. Gino, we have got 1 minute left. Just real quick, we used to say the big improvement came from week 1 to week 2, but because of what you said earlier in the show about all the transfers, I think the bigger improvement comes from week 2 to week 3 now.
Well, and maybe even later, and I think that maybe the improvement is the people that are watching ranking figure out that certain transfers either aren't working out, and quarterbacks experience under center matters, and I don't care what level of football you're playing, and I think we've seen that in the first couple weeks affect end of games when you needed something happen in crunch time. And I think as it goes, it might even work its way to week 5 or 6,
right,
where a team is kind of solidified who they're going to be the rest of the year.
Enjoy Oxford, Mississippi, my friend, and we'll do it again next week.
Sounds good. Como Steakhouse, here we come.
Here you go. And I look forward to being on the plains of Auburn before going back to Nashville to watch the Titans play the Rams in the NFL. Another double duty weekend. Wouldn't have it any other way. Keep it locked to SiriusXM channel 84. We'll be back on Touchdown Radio Tailgate next week.